Hi everyone, today we're going to talk about equations of circles and how to graph a circle. So this is the standard equation of a circle. It reads x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So there are three very important variables in this equation: h, k, and r. H and K are always going to represent the two parts of the coordinate for the center of our circle. R is always going to represent the radius of our circle. Two important things to note. This equation has minus signs built in, which means that you are going to have to use the opposite value for the center. For example, if this said x minus 2, we would actually use positive 2. The other thing to be careful about is that this is r squared, which means if we want to find what r is, we have to take the square root of this value. All right, let's give this first problem a try. Here they say write an equation for the circle with a center at -2, 4 and a diameter of 2. The center of -2, 4 tells me that h is -2 and k is 4. If the diameter is 2, I know that the radius is going to be half of that, which is 1. Now all we have to do is substitute those values into our circle equation. So here we have x minus -2, which will become plus 2 squared, plus y minus k squared equals r squared, and then we'll just simplify r squared. And this is the equation of this circle. Now to graph it, we're actually going to go back and use the original information. We're always going to start with our center. So I'm going to plot the center at -2, 4. Now since our radius is 1, I know that the radius is just the distance from my center to my circle. So I'm going to start at my center and I'm going to move to the right 1. And then I'm going to go back to my center and I'm going to move up 1. And then I'm going to go back to my center and go left 1 and down 1. Here I'm giving myself little guidelines, and then all you have to do is connect them to make a circle shape. Because the distance, once again, from the center to your circle should be 1. So I go to the right 1, up 1, left 1, and down 1, and that gives me a good guideline to graph my circle. All right, go ahead and pause the video and see if you can give this one a try. All right, so here you can see that h is 3, k is -2, and your radius is 5. So when you substitute those values into your equation, you should end up with this final equation. Check that you have x minus 3, y plus 2, and 25. To plot it, you start at the center, which was 3, -2, and then you go out by the distance of your radius. Right 5, up 5, left 5, down 5, and then connect them to make a circle. All right, now let's try to go in the opposite direction. Here we're given an equation and let's graph. So we need to know two things to graph. We need to know the center, which in this case is going to be the opposite of this, so -2, and then the opposite of this value, so +3. And then remember, this value in our equation is always going to be r squared. R squared is 16. Which means that r is the square root of 16, which is 4. Now we can graph our equation. So we go -2, +3. And since our radius is 4, I'm going to go to the right 4, up 4, left 4, and down 4 for guidelines, and then you connect them as best you can to make a circle. And you can see at any point, the distance from the center to your circle should be 4, which is your radius. Okay, go ahead and pause the video and give this problem a try. Okay, so here our center should be at +4, -1. R squared is 9, so our radius is 3. So here's our center, and then right 3, up 3, left 3, and down 3. All right, go ahead and give this other problem a try. Don't overthink this one. The center is easier than you would think. Okay, so here, I don't see any numbers being added or subtracted from y or x. So that means our center is at 0, 0. Many people think that it must be 1 because sometimes we have invisible ones. However, if our center was at 1 or -1, you would see it in the equation. So here our center must be at 0, 0, which is also called the origin. And r squared is 25, so our radius is 5. So we went right 5, up 5, left 5, and down 5. All right, now let's try to write an equation for a problem who has a center at the origin and a radius of the square root of 5. So I know that since the center is at the origin, that's at 0, 0, so h is 0 and k is 0, and they tell us that our radius is the square root of 5. Now, we still use that number in the same way we would any other number. It's okay to have a radius that is a square root or a decimal or fraction. And especially with the square root, it actually ends up working really nicely. So I substituted h, k, and r into our equation. X minus 0 is just x. So this just becomes x squared plus y squared. Now remember, when you have a square root and you square it, these two symbols actually cancel each other out, and we end up with just 5. So that's the equation of the circle. All right, let's try one more together. This one says a circle is centered at the origin, and it goes through the point 3, 5. So here is our center, and it goes through this point at 3, 5, which means that this is a point on our circle. So we know that h is 3 and k is 5. They would like us to find the equation. So there's one important thing that we're missing. We have to find the radius if we want to make an equation for the circle. So I know that the radius is always just the distance from the center to my circle. So if I draw a line here, this line is going to represent our radius. So I'm going to label it R. Now, how can we find it? We can do one of our favorite things, which is to make a right triangle. I can see from my graph that this is 3 units and this is 5 units. So now I can use Pythagorean theorem to find the hypotenuse, which is our radius. So 3 squared plus 5 squared equals r squared. 9 plus 25 equals r squared. R squared equals 34, so r is the square root of 34. Now we just did a problem where our radius has a square root, and we treat it just like any other radius. So now we have all of the information we need, h, k, and r, to make our equation. So let's do x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. And remember, when you square a square root, they cancel each other out, and we're just left with 34. And this is the equation of our line. So remember, strategically, we want to plot our center, and we want to plot the point. If we draw a line connecting the two, that should be our radius. To find that radius, we can always do it by making a right triangle and then using the Pythagorean theorem. All right, please pause the video and give this last one a quick try. Okay, so once again, I have the center and I have some point on my circle, which is 1, 4. So I know the distance from the center to the circle will be the radius. So I turned this into a right triangle. Let me add my little box. And then I use the Pythagorean theorem to get a radius of the square root of 17. R is square root of 17, h is 0, k is 0. Plug it into your formula, and this should be your final answer. All right, that is all for today's video. Thank you for watching.